You're watching a replay of Brain Drain with Rich Cabaceres. For more videos just like this, hit that red subscribe button.
Good morning. It's a lovely Thursday morning here up in the northeast of northeast of the country, South Coast, Massachusetts. We're experiencing a deep, deep thaw. I know that sounds contradictory, but that's exactly what's happening here in South Coast, Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, in Connecticut. So, you know, all that snow that we experienced over an extended period of time, we're seeing it going away. And you're listening to Brain Drain. I'm Rich Cabaceres on the legendary 1480 WSAR. We talk about the topics that you face every single day here on this show. You can call in and join the conversation at 508-673-1480. And you know what we're talking about today? We're talking about the prison system. We're talking about incarceration rates. We are talking about why is it that we have so many people who are imprisoned. And just for a little statistical basis, 20% of the world's prison population is imprisoned here in the United States, even though the United States only makes up for 5% of the world's population. So for the past 35 years, the prison population has increased by more than 400%. That's baffling when you think about it. 1 in every 110 Americans are incarcerated, and 1 in every 35 are in some type of correctional control, whether it's prison, jail, parole, or probation. So this is something that a lot of us face on a regular basis. So according to some statistics, the criminal justice system, and ACLU put out some information about this. ACLU says criminal justice system fails on public safety, fairness, and cost effectiveness. So some statistics that came from an impartial study shows that we spend $74 billion on the prison system. There's publicly traded companies who are getting rich off of this. There's private companies who are getting rich off of this. Meanwhile, we have to ask, is it working? So the recidivism rate is the thing that we should be talking about. When somebody goes to jail, what is the likelihood that they never come back? Right now, 67% of the people who leave prison are likely to come back within 3 years. 76% are likely to come back within 5 years. That is an amazing, amazing rate, considering that the idea of going to prison is to kind of help people adjust. But if you look at other countries, the way they do things, the recidivism rate in a country like Norway is 20%. And part of that is because here in America, we almost want to see somebody get punished. Right? When somebody does something wrong, we expect them to suffer the consequences. And rehabilitation seems to be second. And is that okay? Is that not okay? When somebody commits a crime, should they pay the consequences of that crime, or should we try to help them adjust and get back to society? And that's an ultimate question that I think we have to ask ourselves, because do we just throw them away in prison, or do we just let them sit back and kind of enjoy kind of life, and we teach them how to go back into society again? And this is all brought up because here in Bristol County, Massachusetts, a bunch of inmates just sued the local sheriff of Bristol County, Tom Hodgson, for mistreatment because they were mentally ill, or they had mental health conditions, and they were placed in solitary confinement. And the lawsuit states that their mental health wasn't considered before they were even placed in these solitary confinement areas. So is that something that should be happening? And I know Tom Hodgson has made the news before talking about sending prisoners to build the wall in Texas and the southern border of the United States bordering Mexico. But this is a question that we really have to ask ourselves. Is the prison system working? Is this $74 billion a year that we're spending as in the United States, is that working? Or should we figure out a way that allows people to adjust and come back to society? We're talking about jails. We're talking about prison. We're talking about prison population. We're talking about incarceration and incarceration rates, recidivism rates, and I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear, do you think that the prison system is working? Do you think it's helping people? Do you think it's not helping people? Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Sure. I just want to complain that you aren't on the radio tomorrow. It says the daily prescription of Brain Drain, but every Friday we don't get that prescription.
You know, you're right. Right now, you don't get your daily prescription on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And, yeah, I think that's a fair point.
So the prison system is broken. I don't know what to do to fix it, but it is just not changing the ways of people. You know, they'll go 10 years, 5 years, and come out and do the same. You know, not too many that change. So, you know, I think we need to study in depth what those other countries are doing, to your point, like the Netherlands, and figure out, and maybe even just in some area, some state, you know, adopt whatever they're doing and see if it changes for us.
Now, the question is what do we do? You're talking about going to another country and seeing what they do, but I think part of it is philosophy, right? Because in America, we want to see people get punished for the crimes that they commit and throw them away and lock up the key. It's almost like having them stand in the corner with a dunce cap. Do you think that is the appropriate answer, or do you think that we try to rehabilitate people and try to get them back out on the street as fast as possible?
I think we're trying to put people back out on the streets as fast as possible, and you know, sometimes I just don't think that works. You know, they let them out for good behavior or things like that, and it turns out these people just were being good, so they can get on the road, so they can go do something again. But you know, our politicians all the time, they'll go to Colorado with marijuana, they go to Portugal to, you know, study different topics and things. I don't see why, you know, someone shouldn't go over and just model the system completely, you know, from everything from sentencing for the crimes all the way down to, you know, how long people go there and what would they do after.
Well, we could say that about a lot of systems, right? So we talk about the welfare system pretty often on this show, and the welfare system needs to be completely revamped because it's a system that causes more people to go on it than come off of it. So
yeah,
that's something that we could look at other countries.
The other day you said it was like, what, $45,000?
Yeah.
Equivalent before taxes that people get on welfare. I mean,
it's
that's
actually
more than most people make.
It's actually $50,000 before taxes, and that's as of 2014, I think.
Yeah, that's crazy. We're broken.
Yeah, and you know, I think one of the things that we have to be willing to do in society as a whole is be willing to restart. Say, hey, this isn't working at all. Let's start from scratch, but we have to have a plan before we restart. It's not just do away with it and then see what comes after we do away with it. And in the meantime, there's turmoil and there's animosity, and what are we going to do? And people are falling through the cracks. I think we have to have an accurate plan before we get to the next step. What do you think, caller?
I think we should just start from the top. Let's start with rewriting the way our whole branch of government. That seems to be broken too, and stop top down.
Right, and you have this big issue where the Democrats are making sure that people stay poor, and the Republicans are making sure that people get wealthier, and everybody who's in between, you're really kind of hoping to get the scraps from the Democratic and the Republican Party. But who is that helping?
Nobody.
Right. Caller, thank you so much for your call. I really, really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. We're having some fun here. We're talking about the immigration system. That was yesterday. Incarceration rate here in the United States. Again, some of those statistics. 1 out of every 110 people are incarcerated. 1 in every 35 are under some type of correctional control, whether it be prison, jail, parole, or probation. Something else to consider. Since 1971, when the war on drugs started under President Nixon, people were getting minimum mandatory sentences of 15 to life for drug use and drug dealing. And that even includes marijuana, which is in the process of becoming legal. Think about that for a second, the amount of people who are incarcerated for using marijuana. Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Now, what's the figure you quoted, $74 billion?
Yes.
Now, if we do the math, that's $190 for every man, woman, and child in America each year.
Yep.
You want to know where your tax dollars are going? There's one. Second issue is, you know, most of us have been victims of crime. I have. And viscerally, we love to see them punished. We love it when Joe Arpaio puts them in pink underwear, striped suits, and out in tents and at 120 degrees. We love that. You know, it's not really justice, but we love it anyhow. Are you going to see somebody from Wells Fargo in that tent? No, of course not. Are you going to see somebody from McKesson, the company that was distributing the opioids in there? No, of course not. The other interesting idea, and an important idea, that the law. Have you ever done jury duty?
Yes. Actually, I wasn't selected for jury duty, but I went and I saw the video, which was ultra fun. And if you haven't had the experience of seeing that video yet, just wait. You'll have a blast.
Well, I've never actually done the duty, but I've been called in a few times. And we think it's like Perry Mason. No, it's a very harried system where cases are rushed through very quickly, and you wonder if justice is being done.
Never mind the court-appointed attorneys who are overwhelmed with casework, so they can't really give somebody the amount of work that they're actually doing.
Very good point. And then we're looking at, you got Jeff Sessions here, who wants to toughen up sentencing for people at the bottom of the pile. Isn't that nice? Hey, and also we got a lot of privatization of the prison system. Profit motive? Is it going to be as profitable if they don't have those people coming back?
It's funny because there are publicly traded companies, there are private companies that are making money in this, and they're making billions of dollars, and their money is increasing every single year. And one of the things is they're saying that if there's a private prison who is managing these prisoners, the recidivism rate is even higher than if it's a public prison.
Well, that makes sense. Do you think they're going to want to use the money that could be profit to help these people? Of course not. One last thought.
But the question is,
sure.
Are there really evil people? Could somebody, are people able to be helped? Or should they just be locked away and the key thrown away? And should that be the standard of operation?
Well, the Europeans don't seem to use that approach.
And the Europeans aren't always right.
No, you're right. But, is anybody going to say what we're doing now is working?
That's a good question. And do we need to fix it? I think we need to fix just about everything. Right?
Isn't it funny? We've got maybe after some point of a country existing, there needs to be a lot of repair work. But last thought, one thing we don't get aware of enough, and I've seen it on TV over the years, how when you're at the lower end of the economic ladder, you are almost presumed to be guilty.
Well, that's the case all across the board. Due process is a right. And if somebody gets accused of anything, it goes in the paper and people automatically, or it goes on the news channels, and people automatically assume they're guilty. And we can look at multiple things.
Do you remember the time they used to put the pictures of prostitutes in the newspaper?
I don't remember that time.
No, well, it was New Bedford, quite a while ago. And every time I saw that picture, no judgment on the crime or anything, I said, we're assuming they're guilty.
Right.
And there was I think it was Agriculture Secretary under Reagan. I think his name was Watt, who said he was tried and found not guilty. He says, where do I get my reputation back now?
Right. Well, look at these folks who are being accused of assault. Look at the folks that are accused of murder who don't have the ability to defend themselves. Look at people like O.J. Simpson, who was presumed guilty before he was guilty.
And the only thing that saved him, let's be blunt, money.
Money, exactly. You're hitting the nail on the head. Money is the thing that saved O.J. Simpson, but everybody thought he was guilty.
Yeah.
Right? And people still think he's guilty.
No notoriety, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, I don't know. One last thought. There was a case. It was on the TV news once of a woman. She was renting an apartment. A fire started. Poor woman, and they were ready to charge her. A lawyer got so outraged, he took the case pro bono or whatever you call it, and it found out it was an electrical short circuit.
Caller, thank you so much for your call. Have a great day. Call, you're live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Well, good morning.
How you doing?
Hey, get out and get some exercise, sorry.
Oh, it's a perfect day if you live in South Coast, Massachusetts, if you live in Rhode Island, or anywhere in New England for that matter, to get up and get some exercise.
Yeah,
because it is warm. It's a balmy 45 degrees right now, I think.
Yeah, it's not bad out.
It feels
there's no sunshine, but you know something, it feels good. Hey, you think you say welfare keeps you on welfare. You don't think they keep you in prison?
Well, and if you think about how much money we're spending on the average person to be in prison, we're spending, and the country is spending anywhere between $30,000 to $60,000 to keep someone in prison. So we're spending more money to keep them in prison than we would by helping to rehabilitate them out in society.
So let's go back to what you just said, Nixon.
Yep.
Marijuana charges. When he had studies about marijuana back in the day, when he's the one that put it in the class 1 category.
I heard you talking about that. I heard you talking about that, actually. I think it was during the Will Flanagan show here on the legendary 1480 WSAR.
No, it was during the Right Thoughts.
Oh, Jim DuPont's show. Yes,
yeah,
at 3 o'clock.
Like him. He's a nice guy. Listen, they actually had studies where it's anti-inflammatory medication. Think about what medication, like 800 Motrin or Naproxen. I know all these medications because I took every one of them. Anti-inflammatory, okay? And it's classed as like heroin or cocaine, which is unbelievable. They put in a temporary class, and they left it there. And they left it there for a reason, man. They left it there because they could charge you with a felony, isn't it? Most likely, so much weed you got.
Well, think about
Matter
how many...
Matter of fact, his commission, he created a commission back in the day and said that it should be legalized. Back then, in 72.
And I heard you talk about that.
And we've been suffering all this time.
And part of it is because think of who's getting wealthy off of this. There's people who are making money off people getting indicted and people being incarcerated. And so I think part of it, too, we have to understand the difference between a federal crime and a state crime.
Did you see Joe last night on TV? Joe, the Sheriff Joe?
No.
He looks good for his age. 85 years old. He doesn't got a wrinkle. He says it's from the Italian oil that he uses.
Caller, thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Yeah, take care.
You too. So on Facebook Live, we had somebody say rehabilitation is key. Prison does not work for every situation. But the point of that statement is prison does work, right? So there are some people who I think you may have to lock away and throw away the key. And we're talking about violent crimes, very, very violent crimes. Are we able to rehabilitate those folks? And a lot of those are due to some type of mental health disorder. So the question would be, do we just do away with the prison system altogether and we say, hey, we're going to just rehabilitate people, throw them out on the street and hope that they don't do it again? Because even in places like Norway, the recidivism rate is 20%, meaning that when they send people out, 20% of those people, 1 in every 5, are going back to prison again. So do you think that it's less dangerous to throw those people out and keep them in prison longer? Because that could be an argument that's made from this Norway statistic, right? If 1 in every 5 are going to go out and commit another crime, what's to say that 1 of those 5 isn't going to be the next person to blow up the Oklahoma City building, right? What's to say 1 in those 5 isn't going to be the person who sits up in a hotel in Las Vegas and starts shooting into a crowd? Because we know that these people are criminals. So maybe we throw them away longer, because that would be the other side of the argument. The other side of the argument would say even Norway isn't working because the recidivism rate is 20%. Granted, it's not as bad as the United States, but does Norway have the answer? 1 in every 5? That's a big question, right? Are we willing to deal with the 1 in every 110 people in the United States that are incarcerated, and we think that that's safer than the idea that 1 in every 5 people who come out of prison are going to commit another crime in Norway? So do we have the better system? We're spending a lot more money for the system, but do you think that it's the better system? You can call in and join the conversation at 508-673-1480. You can also join the conversation by going on Facebook Live, typing in the comments. I'm looking at them actively right now, and I'm responding to them as I see them. We're going to go back to the lines. Call your live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hi, this is the first time I call your show.
Sure.
I listened to it.
What do you think?
And as far as prisoners, for those that are innocent, I feel very bad for. But the way on this radio station, every day, we have to listen to Donald Trump. He's no good. They call him all kind of names, but that's okay, right? He is our president.
And caller, on this show, the one thing that I try to do is I try to look at every situation fairly. And I try not to bash Donald Trump the person. I talk about policies. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I thought that both candidates weren't good for the United States. In the preliminary election, I picked a Republican ballot. I voted for John Kasich. And you know what? I felt happy about that. I thought John Kasich was the future of this country. So, that being said, you're right. He is the president of the United States. That doesn't mean that we can't criticize, give positive or negative criticism towards, hopefully positive criticism, but criticize the actions that he takes as our president. Just like we should be able to do the same thing about the governor of the state that you live in, just like you should be able to do the same thing of the mayor or the selectman of the town or city that you live in. You should be able to criticize politicians because they are there representing you.
I agree with that. But what I'm talking about is this goes on every day. Calling down the president, no matter what he does, they will not give him credit for nothing. And all they do is push him down. If he ever did anything right, they would never admit it.
And caller, you know what? I think that's a fair point. And one of the things that I think he did that was actually pretty good was something along the lines of tax reform, right?
Absolutely.
People have been talking about it for years. Whether you liked it or didn't like it, he got it done.
And people are going to benefit from it.
Right.
And they say only the rich. That's not true. Okay? But these people, they call your show every day.
Well,
and it's the same story. I know what they're going to say before they say it.
Now, caller, now you have the ability to call my show and say the opposite story, right? So
this time I've called, but I'm just now this thing about the pink underwear. I could care less about that. In other words, they're embarrassing them. So what? They're only prisoners.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
They're still people. Caller.
Yeah, I know they are.
Caller, thank you so much for your call.
Okay, thank
you. made some very, very, very great points. We're going to go to the Facebook comments. Somebody said, can't call in, but reintegration is key. Most times a jail sentence is a life sentence to things like not getting employment, having to recommit crimes, etc. When is the debt to society paid? Because in a very real way, some people can never get, and I have a see more thing at that point in time. Great comments, caller. We're going to go back to the lines. Caller, you're live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Okay, but thank you. I agree to the last lady to 100,000%. Trump, de race met mental race. It's the way that it is I am. Now, he and the radio anymore. Sick and tired guy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, caller. Have a great day. And to that point, we have to realize that Donald Trump is our president. Whether you like it or you don't like it, Donald Trump is our president. So we have two things that we can do. One is complain about him being the president, much like we've done with every other president previously. Or two, we can look at the actions that person takes and criticize those actions. Call our congressman, call our senators, and tell them that these actions that are being taken, you like them or you don't like them. But just saying that you like somebody or don't like somebody just because you like them or don't like them isn't helping the system. And this is something that's continuing to trickle down through politics, right? So at the state level, whatever state you happen to live in, people like somebody and don't like somebody and are willing to support that person through thick and thin, regardless of what they do or don't do. If the policies are good, not good, whatever. But we need more people who are going to stay unbiased and look at every single decision that somebody makes and look at it and say, is this good for the country? Is this good for the state? Is this good for the city, the town, whatever? Or is this bad for the city? Is this bad for the county? Is this bad for our country? Because that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward. Call your line 14 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning, Rich. How you doing?
Not bad. How are you doing?
I am well. I wanted to call and just speak about the prison system really quick. So the Norwegian model is definitely more economically responsible. We spend, I think we spend the most per person per inmate, or we're pretty high up there.
We do. We spend more per person per inmate.
And so they definitely have a better handle on where your tax dollars go. With that said, and I could be wrong here, it might be Sweden. I might be getting this mixed up with Sweden and Norway, but there was a gentleman who shot something around like 50 people at a camp for young adults or for teenagers. It's in the last couple of years. It was really awful. I mean, he killed like 50 people, and I'm pretty sure his prison cell is nicer than my apartment. And while there's an emphasis on rehabilitation, I also don't think that is correct.
And I think that's a fair point. If you're in prison, should you be treated better than the people who are outside of prison? That's a good question. And also, we're saying that the Norwegian model works better. What do you say about the fact that 1 in every 5 people who gets out is going to commit another crime?
Well, that's not necessarily the fault of the prison system in and of itself. If you look at the majority of the prison system, it's people who either don't have a high school degree or just have a high school degree. They get out of prison, they don't have life skills, they have a record. That's not the prison system's fault for not setting them up for life. That's, that gets into economic policy, and, I don't think a record should be a barrier to living out the rest of your life. But with that said, there's plenty of people who will look around you having a record if you're responsible and have some skills. And a lot of people who end up in the prison system are not responsible and don't have skills. And that's not the fault of the prison system. If anything, while they're in prison, they have that, for lack of a better word, the free time to fix that. And so that's on them to do that.
And that's the assumption that they have access to those things, right?
I would hope so. I mean, to my understanding, every prison does have a library. I love hearing stories about people who go to prison and come out and get themselves a law degree or do very well for themselves, get themselves a high school diploma, get themselves a college degree or a trade, because that's not for nothing. If you're in prison, you've got all that free time. It's either that or hit the weights,
Right. And actually, one of the things we were just talking about, Bristol County Sheriff Tom Hodgson, one of the things that he did early on when he became sheriff was take the ability for heavy weights to be used by prisoners.
I don't agree with Tom Hodgson on a lot of things, but I honestly think at the end of the day, he does want to see people that are under his guidance succeed, for lack of a better word. I think he does want people to better themselves. I really don't agree with him politically. And actually, really quick, I just want to bring up, in response to your previous 2 callers, I think Donald Trump is disgusting on a personal level, and I think professionally he is incompetent, and his administration is the most corrupt administration we've had since Richard Nixon.
Caller,
I think he deserves all the flack in the world, and I hope he gets impeached.
Caller, thank you so much for your call. Have a great day.
Have a good day, Rich.
You too. Caller, good morning. You have a minute before the news. Go for it. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
You got it.
I just want to say, I commented a second ago, the prison sentence doesn't stop when they get released, and there's really no idea of what these men go through and these women go through to try and reintegrate into society. That Corey check can stop you from so many things, and unfortunately it does. Look around. Go to the Columbia Club. See how many guys are working for cash or not working at all. Because they can't go, because they got a bad Corey for something they did 20 years ago. It needs to start locally. It needs to start aggressively to try and reintegrate people into the workforce so that we can get them back on their feet and get tax dollars for what they do. Thanks for the call.
Caller, thank you so much. And you bring up a very good point. And on the other side of the break, we're going to be talking about, because what you just said, we're going to be talking about how Corys work and how hard it is for somebody to be able to get a job after they get convicted of anything or even accused of anything. Thank you so much for your call. We talked about kind of recidivism rate, and one thing that somebody brought up on Facebook actually is an interesting point. If somebody gets out of jail or prison, and the social workers also pair them with somebody who knows a trade and they can learn an actual skill, the recidivism rate might drop. And that's a very, very, very fair point. One of the other points is we gotta try to get them to avoid the sphere of influence that caused them to be there in the first place, right? There's a common saying that you are who you are who you surround yourself with, right? So if everybody around you is causing crime, the likelihood of you causing crime is high, right? And if everybody around you is going and becoming doctors, the odds of you becoming a doctor is pretty high because you tend to want to follow the track that everybody else is following just based on the way that society is and the way you socialize with people. So maybe one of the things that we have to do is remove them from the sphere of influence that created the situation to begin with. How do you make that happen? Call you live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard. This is a very great topic to discuss.
Sure.
I'm not so concerned about training and rehabilitation, although the idiot that runs the jail has no idea that, people are going to get back out later. You know, he don't even let you get a newspaper in that jail. I mean, you're just supposed to be completely caught off guard, and that's, why he's being sued for mentally ill people in solitary confinement. But that's not my point. My point is the employers of the Greater Fall River, not just Greater Fall River, employers in general, Wendy's, Walmart, Amazon, those I know for sure. They won't hire anybody with a record.
Which is crazy when you think about it, right? And to add to that, when I went to high school, you were told if you dropped out of high school, you were going to work at a fast food restaurant. Now, you have to have a high school diploma to work at a fast food restaurant.
Well, years ago, and I don't think you're old enough to remember, but at the corner of Rodman Street and Plymouth Avenue, there was a place there called Dover Stamping. And if you went to jail and you got out, everybody went to Dover Stamping. They didn't care about your record. They just cared, can you work? Will you show up every day? Okay, start tomorrow. But now Amazon, we gave them a great big tiff, but they won't hire anybody who's got a record. Wendy's won't hire anybody with a record. Walmart won't hire anybody with a record. But you want these people to get out of jail, and you want them to stay out of jail, but you won't give them a job so they can get a paycheck so that they can pay their rent, pay their bills, and stay out of jail. It's just ridiculous. And I'll tell you, very soon, and I predict sometime probably 2018, we're going to have a Martin Luther King-style crusade to go after employers who won't hire people with felonies or records. And it's the biggest civil rights problem there is in 2018.
Caller, I think that's a fair point, and I think that's something that could happen, and especially considering that 1 in every 110 people are incarcerated.
Well, how many people have a record? I mean, when I ran a fast food restaurant in the 1980s and 90s, I had one restaurant I was at on the Mass Turnpike. We had a work release program from the Framingham State Prison. We went over and brought people out, and this was like 1983, 84. We were paying people $7.50 an hour while they were incarcerated, which comes out to about $10,000 a year while they're in jail. We'd pick them up, we'd sign them out, they'd come work, we'd bring them back, pick up the next group. If we needed help, I'd call the probation officer, I'd call the parole officer, I'd say, hey, I need 5 or 6 people. And the key was, the deal I made was, hey, look, if Johnny doesn't come to work today, I'm not chasing him down. I'm calling a probation and parole officer to find out why he's not at work, and that's your deal.
Caller,
and
thank you so much for your points, because you're making some very good points about kind of the rehabilitation process after jail. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rich.
And you're listening to Brain Drain on 1480 WSAR. We got to go to a commercial break, but before we do, I want to talk about some Facebook comments. Love the serious issues you bring up. We need people to talk about how real reforms benefit everyone. We need to punish criminals by forcing them to be productive. Mandatory education and controlled social reintegration so that they can be useful. And, I think that we're still punishing them. I don't know if you can force somebody to learn. Massachusetts. Call, you're live in 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'd like to switch it. I'd like to stay on the topic, but turn it around a little bit.
Sure.
How about the guys, meaning us, correction officers, that go in there and work day after day and deal with incarcerated inmates? Okay, what about us?
Yeah.
Does anybody ever think about us, what we go through on a daily basis, or what we have gone through on a daily basis? No. It's always firefighters, EMTs, police officers. You very, very rarely hear about a correction officer's life.
So
now,
tell us,
we deal
caller.
with these guys on a daily basis, okay? Day after day, okay? 40 hours a week, sometimes more if you work overtime. I can't talk for about the days now. I started as a correction officer after I'm a veteran. I was an MP in the service. When I got out of the service, I entered the Department of Corrections in Massachusetts, okay? And this was in 1977, okay? And I can tell you about the prisons back in 1977. It was the Stone Age, okay? I'm talking about inmates that were in cells that didn't have toilets, that didn't have sinks, that didn't have anywhere to go, okay? They had what we used to call slop buckets. They used to have to urinate and defecate in these buckets. And the guys in the day shift would open up their cells, and they'd come sloshing out with the crap and the urine and dump them in a sink. Okay, this is back in 1977. Okay, I'm talking back in the Stone Age when things used to happen nobody wanted to hear about, nobody cared about. As long as they were not on the streets, they didn't care about. What about us that went through that? Okay, it was brutal. Okay, you want to talk about concentration camps. The duty of a correction officer is care, custody, and control. Okay? Forget about the care part. It was custody and control. That was it. It was nothing but survival. That was it. It nothing but a warehouse. It was keep you back to the wall. Things like that. The things that I've seen, I was part of, that I'm not going to talk about. It was brutal. I mean, and I think it just carried on over the years. And I'm not sure it's really even that much better, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I can remember coming out of work one night, and here's Ted Koppel. Remember Nightline? Ted Koppel.
Yep.
Okay, and here's Ted Koppel, little short guy, smoked cigarette, chain smoker.
I remember
Short guy.
Nightline.
Okay.
I don't remember his name.
And here he is with the camera crew behind him, and he's putting microphones in our faces. He wanted us to talk about this, that, and the other thing because there was a thing in the state of Massachusetts that was going on at this particular prison that I worked at about wrongful death suits, about inmates dying and not knowing, and there was this, that, and the other thing talked about, and I don't want to get into it, but nothing but a warehouse. I mean, the inmates would be out there in the cold, like a day like today with all the snow. They'd have no warm clothing. They would have nothing. But we didn't care. It was like Gestapo. We weren't correction officers back then. We were SS. That was it. It was survival for the fittest. There was no such thing, not even a thought about rehabilitation. That's not even... I can remember when I started, okay, in 1977, I made $213.05 a week. That was my take-home pay.
Wow.
And that was a lot of money for me. I got out of the service. I was an MP in the service. And I got in, and I took the exam, and blah, blah, blah. And I went, and I went through the academy. It was at Framingham State Prison. It was at the women's prison where they had the academy at the time. But I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there that are probably listening, and they can relate to what I'm talking about.
And caller,
and, I would just like people to think about the guys that watch over these people, not these people, But the guys that go to work day after day after day and go through the mental stress, the physical stress, I've seen so many early deaths. I've seen alcoholism. I've seen divorce rates. I've been to so many funerals over the years that guys have died earlier than they should have. So let's just talk. Let's just give a little shout out to us, okay?
Caller,
have a good day.
Have a great day. And I think I couldn't have done it any better myself for the shout out for you, because you're right. There are people who have to oversee these people, and the population that they're managing is far greater than the population who is protecting themselves against themselves. So, yeah, I think you bring up some very, very good points. I want to thank you for your service, sir, because you said you served in the military, and I want to thank you for your service to the county or the state or whatever level of prison or jailing that you're working in, because you're right. There are people who are trying to protect those people from themselves. And I also want to point out that it's not easy work. You're right. We point at the firefighters, we point at the police officers, we point at the military, and we're grateful for the work that they do, but we tend to forget the correctional officers. So, again, sir, thank you for your service, and the things that they have to go to. They're dealing with the PTSD. They're dealing with the destruction of the family system because they have to work strange hours. If you've ever worked for public safety in any way, shape, or form, you know what that's like. It's straining on the family. So, again, it's not forgotten. I really, really appreciate the service, sir. Thank you for calling in. And if you work in these prisons or if you've ever been incarcerated, feel free to give a call, 508-673-1480. I want to hear your take. Do you think that we need to be more rehabilitative? Do you think that we need to just throw them away and lock up the key? Or lock them up and throw away the key? I got it right that time. Lock them up, throw away the key. There we go. That's the order. Don't throw away the key and then lock them up, because who knows what happens then. You can't lock them up at that point in time. And we're going to continue the conversation, go right to the calls, because we're in our last segment, 508-673-1480. Good morning, caller. How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Good. What's up?
I'm still trying to figure out why Councilor Stevie Camara did that.
So, caller, it's funny.
I'm amazed, because I've always heard him say the future of the city is education and all that.
Caller, he's been contradicting his statement since as long as I've been paying attention.
Oh, man, he's something else. And you ought to remember, he's finished ninth.
And you know what's scary?
There's not much room for him.
You know what's scary about local politics pretty much all over the country is when you make statements about the president or about federal politicians or even some state politicians, it's okay. But the second you start talking about local politicians, you're not supposed to do that. That's scary, because we should be able to criticize our politicians all across the board.
Well, I have no problem criticizing Stevie. Stevie gives me the impression that Stevie's out for Stevie.
Caller, I think a lot of people...
I'm sorry, that's the impression I get from him.
A lot of people share that opinion. Thank you so much, caller.
Yep.
Have a great day. Caller, you're live on 1480 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning. Listen, we're going to be getting a lot of rain, and we got to clean out these storm drains with all this snow that's here. Otherwise, we're going to have a hell of a mess when the snow starts to melt.
Caller,
and
I think
might be that. Yeah.
Thank you for the pointer for people who live in the Northeast. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure they really appreciate it. So if you're hanging out this weekend or Friday, you might want to get up on that ladder, clean out your gutters, because it's brutal if you don't.
No. Listen, no. I'm talking about where the snow is on the street.
Oh, you're talking about flooding. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the storm drains.
Oh, okay.
Because they're all covered with the snow.
Well, part of that is because of the plowing job, right?
Because if the city doesn't get these all uncovered, the city is going to have an awful time, because the water's going to have nowhere to go, and the streets are going to get flooded.
I'm sure.
You know what's going to happen when it gets flooded? St. Anne's is going to get flooded, and so are a lot of other places. If they do something about it, and they have to do it before it gets flooded.
So I'm sure that there's going to be some excuse that comes out of the administration, or they're going to blame it on somebody else. So
Well,
hopefully they're going to fix it.
Okay, here's the deal, though. I've already negated the excuses because I've already put it out there.
You got it,
so
caller.
There can't be an excuse now.
You got it, caller.
The excuse is now faulted.
And you know that's the best part about the radio, right? Because once it's out there, it's out there.
The excuse is now negated.
You got it.
Okay, you take care, my friend.
Have a great day. Call you live at 14 WSAR. Good morning.
Good morning. I just drove through the south end for the work crews are out clearing all the drains.
Good.
So
good. That's great to hear.
Know.
There you go. Thank you so much for the pointer, caller.
Okay.
Have a great day. And we're going to continue the conversation about the prison system. So a couple more statistics that I want you to walk away with, because I think it's important that we continue this conversation, right? So we have to ask ourselves, is the 76% recidivism rate within 5 years a good statistic? Or do we need to make changes, right? Norway is at 20%. Do we need to make changes to something more like Norway, or do we need to get more extreme and keep them in prison longer? The question is up to you, because right now, when people get out of prison, when they get out of jail, whether it be federal prison, where you could have seen guys like Buddy Cianci, where you soon may see a local elected official, if it's federal prison or if it's local jail, where you see a lot of people who go there just to await trial, when you come out of into society again, you're treated as if you have the scarlet letter. And you're expected to go out and get a job, but you have this Corey, you have this background that is following you, and every time you try to get a job, you have this issue. So you can't get a job. So how are you going to get or become a productive member of society again if you can't get a job? And we had a caller call in earlier saying fast food chains won't hire you if you have a bad Corey, meaning if you have a bad background check. Fast food chains will not hire you. Other minimum wage jobs will not hire you. So what do? Where do you go? Where do you work if you get out of jail, you've done your time, and now it's your time to go back to society? What do you do? And a lot of times the only option in order to make real money is either 1, go on welfare, claim a disability, or 2, commit another crime. Is that the way the system should be? Should we be more forgiving, right? Majority of the people who are in this area, majority of the people around the country, talk about Christianity and how Christianity is based on forgiveness. Well, maybe we should be a little more forgiving, right? If that is the religion that you practice, forgiveness is part of that religion. So maybe we should be more forgiving and say, hey, you did your time. Now we're going to give you the opportunity to not only come out, but as another person, actually, I think he called in or said this on Facebook Live, we should pair them with somebody who actually knows a trade. Teach them a trade. Get them out into society and get them into some sort of co-op program or something along the lines of when they graduate, they've already got a job lined up for them so they can be productive members of society. I think part of the issue is there aren't enough jobs to go around. So employers have the ability to restrict who comes in because there are more people looking for jobs than there are jobs. And we've talked about that, the unemployment rate and how it's fixed because people who aren't looking for jobs aren't counted. So if there are more people looking for jobs than there are jobs, it's easy to weed out people with bad backgrounds. So what I think ultimately the answer is we need to create more middle-class paying jobs. But you've listened to Brain Drain on the legendary 1480 WSAR.